like to introduce someone who was very instrumental in putting our band, the Eagles, together, and also our favorite girl singer. Would you welcome Linda Ronstadt?
Linda just walked past me in the Troubadour one night, and I said, "Hi, I'm John David. I think you should cook me dinner." And she said, "Okay," gave me her phone number, and I called her.
When Linda Ronstadt first crossed paths with J.D. Souther at the Troubadour, he shared a modest Echo Park apartment with Glenn Frey. It was there that Glenn and J.D. began to shape their musical bond, forming the duo Long Branch Penny Whistle. Just below them lived Jackson Brown, whose mornings began with the sharp whistle of the teapot that woke up Glenn and J.D., and soon after, that would evolve into Jackson at the piano, practicing the same song on repeat. Glenn Frey took note of Jackson's composing process, playing the same verse and chorus over and over until it felt just right. Glenn was absorbing every drop of knowledge he could get on the process of making music, while he and J.D. spent as much time as possible at the Troubadour, where much of their education was shaped.
I was in this duo, Long Branch Penny Whistle, with this guy named J.D. Souther. We started going to the Troubadour all the time, 5 nights a week. Out there in the bar, I would sit with people and I would ask questions. Gene Clark would come in and I'd talk with him about songwriting and ask him why the Byrds break up. The next day, the guys from Crosby, Stills and Nash, who writes the songs, where do they rehearse? I was trying to collect as much information as possible that could help me get to where I wanted to be.
They are playing gigs around Los Angeles after recording their debut album, but it fails to go anywhere.
Jackson Brown took me over to David Geffen's house one day. I played him a couple of songs.
I told J.D. and Glenn that they needed to split up, that Long Branch Penny Whistle wasn't going to work. And I told Glenn that he wasn't good enough to be a solo artist. He needed to put together a band.
Glenn Frey and J.D. Souther found themselves at a crossroads after they disbanded, when a new opportunity opened up for Frey. That twist of fate would lead him to his future songwriting partner, the formation of the Eagles, and at one point, a tense moment in a London studio with a stinging declaration.
"You're not a rock and roll band. The Who is a rock and roll band, and you're not that."
It's a remarkable journey that begins in Southern California, where the country rock sound is taking off. When Linda Ronstadt needed a backup band to tour with her on the East Coast, she thought of Glenn Frey and invited him to join.
I thought Glenn was so good, you know. I mean, I just thought he was great. And I told him that he was a hot shot. I said, "You're going to do something someday, but in the meantime, you're starving to death. Why don't you come and play music with me? We'll have a great time."
And soon after that, Linda discovers this band Shiloh playing at the Troubadour, taking note of their singing drummer.
I was walking through the Troubadour one night on my way to the bathroom. This band Shiloh got up and did my exact version of Silver Threads and Golden Eagles. I just went, "What?" That's, you know, it's that solo. I thought, God, what? You know, I was appalled that anyone would actually sit down with one of my records and learn the solo off. And I heard the drummer and I thought he was really good.
I auditioned at this little house in Laurel Canyon.
Our A&R guy produced the Stone Ponies with Linda Ronstadt, and he started hiring me to work on sessions. I met Linda. I later was in her band.
Although she didn't know it at the time, Linda Ronstadt had stumbled upon the beginnings of what would become one of the most iconic bands in music history. Now, it's worth noting that Linda's not just a fabulous singer, she has a knack for spotting a great song and turning it into something spectacular, a song stylist. And just like she did with so many songs that have become part of the fabric of American music, and Don Henley are sharing a room while striking up a friendship. Both men are raised in working class families. Glenn is from Detroit, where his father works in an automotive factory and his mom makes pies for GM. Glenn even meets Bob Seger when he is 16 years old, who goes on to mentor him and lets him sing backup on Ramblin' Gamblin' Man.
He was just so young, and I liked him right away because he was so funny. He had a great sense of humor. course, that was a national hit for us, so that was really cool.
But once Glenn's mom catches him smoking pot in the basement, she puts an end to his early rock pursuits, even calling Seeger's manager to tell him Glenn will not be coming back. Don Henley is from Linden, Texas, where his father also works in the automotive industry, as he saves his extra quarters so Don can go to college. Each week, they take their savings and buy U.S. savings bonds for Don's college fund. He will study as an English major for over 3 years, which will prove invaluable, laying the foundation for the lyrical depth that defined his songwriting. And like Glenn, Don also connects with a well-known local musician, Kenny Rogers, in the first edition. Kenny takes him under his wing, brings his band Shiloh to Los Angeles, and sets the stage for their discovery by Linda Ronstadt at the Troubadour. Two of her other backing band members, guitarist Bernie Ledden, who was formerly with Flying Burrito Brothers, and bass player Randy Meisner, formerly of Poco. And with that, the Eagles lineup is complete.
They started talking about putting a band together, and we told them they should get Bernie Ledden.
Meanwhile, back in Laurel Canyon, Linda and JD are now living together, where he begins writing iconic songs that she records, such as Faithless Love.
We lived together about 1.5 years. We used to have a really good time singing together. We used to have a really good time listening to music together. I'd hear him writing something down the hall, and I'd go down and listen, and I'd say, I really like that, teach it to me.
The frustrations in the relationship would lead to him writing these incredible songs that Linda would bring to life.
It was like having a tailor-made songwriter, you know? We'd go through some horrible row, and he'd write a song about it, and I'd sing it. It was great.
I had a little piano room in the back of the house. I kept getting halfway through Faithless Love. She came padding down the hall and said, I think it's really beautiful and I'd love to record it. When Linda says she wants to record something, it's very encouraging.
Glenn and Don would come to Linda and JD's house to rehearse their early songs, as they had nowhere else to practice, while Linda and JD would leave and go out because the place was so small. Glenn and Don, shaped by their Midwest and Texas roots, would begin to fuse their backgrounds to evolve country rock into a new direction, filling songs with the American idioms and imagery they grew up with. One of the first shows they play is at an art gallery opening with their Laurel Canyon counterparts in attendance, such as Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, and Mama Cass. One of the only songs they had penned at this time was Witchy Woman, which they played over and over again throughout the night, while in a show of support, everyone got up and danced each time. Soon the Eagles were signed by David Geffen's label Asylum Records and sent to Aspen, Colorado to come up with songs to record. They recruited famed English producer Glenn Johns to produce them, who was initially not impressed with what he heard. Considering he produced legendary groups like the Beatles, Rolling Stones, and Led Zeppelin, they had a lot to live up to. Meeting, but he went back to hear them in a rehearsal and again was ready to decline when by chance he heard them harmonize.
Studio where Led Zeppelin did rock and roll. Oh my God, I can't wait.
You're not a rock and roll band. The Who is a rock and roll band, and you're not that.
That twist of the knife, wrapped in bourgeois English veneer, didn't sit well with two working-class Americans who weren't about to be. Soon, Johns is out, and Joe Walsh's American producer Bill Seismic is in. He helps take their sound up a notch, right where they want it to be, with a more edgier rock sound. They leave London and finish the album in Los Angeles. From this point on, they will go on to complete the album On the Border with songs like Already Gone. Cashbox said that this was the Eagles' best single release to date, calling it a hard rocker driven by the group's incredible harmonies. However, the biggest hit on the album, Best of My Love, was initially completed in London. However, it was later remixed by Seismic. Best of My Love was written by J.D. Souther, Glenn Frey, and Don Henley. Glenn recalled, I was playing acoustic guitar one afternoon in Laurel Canyon, and I was trying to figure out a tuning that Joni Mitchell had shown me a couple of days earlier. I got lost and I ended up with the guitar tuning for what would later turn out to be the best of my love. According to Henley, most of the lyrics were written in a booth in Dan Tana's restaurant close to the Troubadour. The lyrics were inspired in part by Henley's breakup with his girlfriend at the time. The song would become the most successful of their singles released so far, giving the band their fourth studio album, One of These Nights, in June 1975. A breakthrough album for the Eagles, making them international superstars. It was the first in a string of 4 consecutive #1 albums. The song One of These Nights was written by Glenn and Don in an attempt to move away from country rock ballads. In the linear notes of the very best of, Fry had this to say about the song. We had Don Henley's voice, which allowed us to go in a more soulful direction, which made me exceedingly happy. We made a quantum leap with One of These Nights. It was a breakthrough song. It is my favorite Eagles record. If I ever had to pick one, it wouldn't be Hotel California. It wouldn't be Take It Easy. For me, it would be One of These Nights. It was written by Randy Meisner, Don Henley, and Glenn Frey, and began as a solo composition by Meisner. As it remained unfinished when time came for One of These Nights album to be recorded, Henley and Frey assisted Meisner. In December 1976, the Eagles released their 5th album with their 3rd #1 hit single, New Kid in Town, written by Henley, Frey, and Souther. Track, Hotel California. The song will become the Eagles' signature song and create more folklore about its meaning than pretty much any song in modern music. The song was co-written by Felder, Henley, and Frey. After Felder sent them a tape with the song's guitar chords he came up with, and they noticed one that stood out: the audience at concerts. But disputes over his refusal to perform would also lead to Meisner's departure from the band. Don and Glenn didn't want to disappoint fans, but Randy got intimidated to try to hit those high notes, and anxiety got the best of him, leading to a physical altercation with Frey backstage one night.
Most people who make it in the music industry are not prepared. Success can be just as scary as failure, if not scarier. And some people don't actually live through it.
The band replaced Meisner with the same musician who had succeeded him in Poco, Timothy B. Schmidt. The huge success and worldwide tour in support of the album further drained the band members and strained their personal and creative relationships. The Long Run was released in September 1979, and while it was the beginning for Timothy B. Schmidt, it was the beginning of the end for the other members. The album includes 3 top 10 singles: Heartache Tonight, I Can't Tell You Why, and In the City by Joe Walsh. That was their last studio album of that era before the Eagles' 1980 breakup.
You feed the machine that is the record business, and the monster wants more. Every artist has a peak, a creative peak, a sales peak, and then comes the pressure of trying to repeat that.
The Eagles, they kept their circle. That's what I always liked about them most, the loyalty to each other in those early Laurel Canyon years.
We'd like to introduce someone who was very instrumental in putting our band, the Eagles, together, and also our favorite girl singer. Would you welcome Linda Ronstadt?
Along the way, the Eagles paid tribute to the woman who brought them together, let them rehearse at her home, saved them from a sophomore slump, and was a cheerleader throughout their entire career. Glenn Frey even inducted Linda Ronstadt into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014. Due to health issues, she was unable to attend the ceremony, so Frey delivered the induction speech and accepted the honor on her behalf. Frey's heartfelt tribute highlighted Ronstadt's profound influence on American music and her pivotal role in shaping the careers of many artists, including the Eagles. Linda's good nature and supportive attitude paid off in multitudes.
The Eagles were not pioneers. The Eagles were settlers. But I do believe that we did a pretty good job of cultivating the land that we settled. We put ourselves into it and made it uniquely our own.
The Eagles story is filled with so many Americanisms, their sound capturing the laid-back spirit that defines so much of the country's identity. while the band itself is built on hard work and strong ambitions. Alongside Linda Ronstadt, they managed to bottle the essence of American life during an unforgettable moment in time. One of the best things about this era of country rock music is the way it takes you right back to that time, like you're driving down a lonely desert road with a warm breeze blowing through your hair in 1972, trying to find that spot you heard about in Joshua Tree to set up camp, light a fire, and howl at the moon.
I wanna sleep with you in the desert tonight.
I hope you enjoyed that story. Be sure to like and subscribe, and you can become a member to watch the video for ad-free if you like. The link is in the description.